So over the last few weeks, I've been doing quite a bit more of 3D printing and using services like Printables, Thingiverse, and all of those a lot more. Now, there is one that I've always been interested in, but I didn't quite fully understand, which is Thangs. Now, they've even sponsored Maker Tales, and I used to have a real good connection with them, except things went a little bit awry. The marketing person that I was talking to sort of left the company and then they sort of forgot about me. So one day I actually got in contact with Thangs and then we got talking and I had a whole bunch of questions because I truly fundamentally wanted to understand Thangs deeply. I wanted to know what the hell they were making because I did not understand it. Now from there, they answered everything I could possibly throw at them, and I learnt that I quite like the idea of Thangs, but there were still questions left to be answered, and I knew there were still questions that you wanted answered. So I asked them if they would be interested to a no holds bar interview where I can ask them anything straight up, and I got all your questions and my questions, and I asked them. And this here is the entire interview, unedited, uncurated, straight out. So here I am with Dennis, and I'm just going to leave Dennis to introduce himself here.
Thanks, Jonathan. First, happy to be here. I'm Dennis DeMeyer. I'm the CTO over at Thangs, and I am a huge fan of Maker Tales and the content that you all are building. What you're doing to help beginners is remarkable.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis. All right. So this is pretty much going to be just us having a chat. I have a whole bunch of questions that both I have and the community has. And I've already asked you a whole bunch before we get into this because I needed to know everything about you. I even read their terms and conditions for this, by the way. So I went deep and I'm asking the hard questions. The questions that you thought I couldn't ask, I'm asking them. So, first and foremost, what is the concept behind Thangs and why was Thangs created in the first place?
I love that question. I'll give you two answers. The first is, why was it created in the first place? And then the second is, what is the concept behind Thangs itself? So why was it created in the first place is actually a simple answer. What the company has that is unique to us is the ability to do a deterministic 3D search. We don't use sampled data sets. We don't use point cloud feature histograms. We can search for, if I upload this mouse and you give me just a click wheel, I will find every mouse that that click wheel fits within. With that 3D search, you can do a lot. And so the concept behind Thangs is that it's actually 3 products in one platform. And now I'm getting the longer answer, of course. And that is, it's a search tool first. It does search by geometry in the same way that you would with Google Images, where you would upload an image and then find all the other images that are similar. You could upload a model and then find all the other models that have shared geometry, basically. So it's a search product first. Then it's a content platform, just user-generated content. On the search side, we've been up to about a search a second. We tend to sit between one search every 1 to 2 seconds right now. So a lot of search users. On the content side, somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 models are uploaded by our users on a weekly basis for sharing on Thangs. And then the third is it's a set of design tools. And so that's Thangs Sync and Thangs Workspace, which people tend to consider to be similar to like a geometric GitHub because it does visual revision control between all of your model versions. And then Sync automates that process of uploading it. So the short answer is we do 3D search. The long answer is it's a 3D platform that has 3 different use cases.
The long answer is it's complicated.
It,
So
it's a standard platform. Yeah, it's got a lot built into it. You're spot on.
yeah, I think overall it's just, I don't know, it's just very new. And yeah, it's quite something. So I'm going to jump into the next one then here, which is, well, a lot of people basically are asking what exactly is the business plan because we don't know how you're making money because quite frankly, it's free, unlimited upload. You're adding all these tools in there. And the saying goes, if there's no product to sell, you are the product. And so here it is. What is the business plan of Thangs?
I'm glad you asked the question. There's 2 parts. We have 2 products. One is called FISNA, which stands for physical DNA, 3D search. That's how we approach the problem. We create this stranded DNA. Now, that's an enterprise tool, and very large Fortune 100 companies pay us to use it. Now, they use it to search their own data set. There is no connection between the two at all. They're fully isolated
in any way whatsoever.
in any way whatsoever. And we have to do that because the enterprise tool actually has legal compliance requirements. So think SOC 2 would be a good example. For auditing purposes, because we are audited on this,
Right.
they have to be isolated. So like they are isolated properly. Data sets, systems, infrastructure, different.
Okay, so you've got
Single
FSNA.
for example, on the enterprise side.
So you have FSNA. What exactly is Thangs' business plan?
That was the second part of the answer. I'm glad you asked. So the second part is we are planning to monetize things directly. Now, we don't do that through ads. We search other platforms and we give those platforms traffic for free. We don't charge them for placement. We don't even rank our own results above those other platforms. We're monetizing in a traditional software as a service model. So we're building Sync and Workspace, which are tools for designers. And there's some cases where we've had tens of thousands of users in a single month on just one of those tools. Down the line, and we have plenty of runway, down the line, we plan to monetize that by charging for things like Okta integration, which gives you identity and data lifecycle management capabilities, and other more advanced enterprise features. But it's a standard SaaS model in the same way that you would pay GitHub for a professional.
In a nutshell, there's going to be a Thangs Pro in the future.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, all right. So, and well, the other question that comes up has actually come up quite a bit is, so obviously you just said you've got a whole bunch of runway for this, but that basically means you have money. And what's a lot of people have mentioned is that we see FSNA, massive investment coming in there. So are you using like venture capital funds to sort of get this going? And is it, are you pressured by them to make things as profitable as possible? And that fits into crazy questions later on in here.
I was gonna say, I feel like we're right at the tip of the iceberg of like, now we're gonna do some myth busting.
Yeah.
So I'll just be definitive in my answer. No, we do have venture capital investors, and the answer is no. They're not applying any sort of undue pressure on us to monetize or do anything nefarious. They're actually pretty seasoned investors that sit on our board of directors, and they get the big picture. We did, to answer the question within the question, of course, Jonathan, we raised a rather sizable round that's out there in public back in July of last year, and that gives us multiple years of runway. But keep in mind, the plan has never been that Thangs would be this hard monetization, and we're going to take some data and then find a way to get money out of it. That wasn't the goal with Thangs. FSNA is an enterprise product, and it does solve some very valuable problems like supply chain optimization, part reuse, design efficiency. So there's monetization there, and then Thangs is a bottoms-up software as a service platform.
Okay, so just to dispel it one last time here.
Yes.
You are not building a 3D library of things to either build an AI or a machine learning algorithm, or to sell the idea that you have all this data to your big corporate clients.
We are not building, and I love the clarification, we are not building some sort of generalized artificial intelligence using this massive data set, nor do we have plans to do so. We use basic machine learning, but it tends to be for things like looking for, I mean, this is exactly what it's used for, non-family friendly content like anybody does, and then making sure that doesn't end up on the landing page. But no large neural network that we're building using customer data. In fact, we have never trained a neural net against our customer data or our search index.
All right, awesome. Okay, so the next question is, why not just replicate something like Thingiverse and then take it from there? Because you guys really came into the space hard with the influencers at that point where Thingiverse was just, well, let's just say, lacking. And I don't know, it feels that you should have started that way, but I want to know, was there a reason you didn't?
There, so I would argue that there's a reason not to do it because I love this question. And the reason not to do it is Thingiverse is a great platform. It's still beloved in the community. Yeah, and I realize there have been some issues. What I would say is that it's also it's a product and a platform that was developed at a different time. And so there's opportunities to do things better. And what we aren't huge fans of is just taking what somebody else has done and copying and pasting, but instead trying to say, what could it be like? And that's what our goal was. We wanted to design a platform that was a different take, supported, for example, in our case, 28 different file format types, had a viewer that was an actual 3D viewer that could go through very complex, think 1,000 part assemblies and explode out and allowed you to isolate them down at the part level. We wanted to think about recommendation engines that weren't built on an old technology stack. We used our geometric search to actually tell you what are the related models. It's a different take based on what is available to us today. And then also what we do that's very unique and different. We're also very designer and creator forward. And I'm going to make the case that not all platforms are like this. Take a look at our file explorer. Look at our cloud sync that allows you to take everything and automate every version. Then think about the revision control or GitHub-like capabilities that we have for 3D models. They are very unique. It is advanced computational geometry. So it's not just a rinse and repeat of a old content management stack where people are using 2D images instead of 3D objects. We are making everything truly 3D native from the beginning.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I guess ultimately, from coming from the 3D printing realm, I have a feeling that there's been a slight disconnection at one point, which is you guys really are building a brand new tool here. And because you went so hard when Thangs was like literally disintegrating, everybody thought that you were going to be very much a 3D print showcase platform once again. I think you're more sort of the space to make the 3D models, and then to show them off, you use different platforms. But Thangs is very much a, hey, look, you come in here, let's make something together and search for the things to make the things. Because I don't think you're going to be adding, I don't know, categories like the fidget spinner category and the 3D print upgrades category and stuff like that.
Actually, I'm going to make the case again, just for fun, that we are. So
Okay.
if you go to the Explore menu, on Thangs, we do have some categories. They're going to continue to evolve, but we also have tags. Tags are user generated, and it can be any category that you want, whatever's popular that week. If you look at the other major platforms, it would appear, and whether you're looking in more the world of USDZ, GLTF, or you're thinking more along the lines of 3MF and STL, it looks like we're going to be the first platform to reach 10 million users in about 2 years ever. We currently are receiving more user uploads than all of the other platforms but one. So the data would say that users are leveraging us for publishing and user-generated content. We are approaching 200,000 user-generated uploaded models within our first 2 years. Other platforms that have been around for 10 years or so have just hit that milestone. And so we're still the new guys on the block, and we know that. At the same time, I would argue we're catching up pretty quickly.
All right. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing more of those categories in place because I think it's something that people are definitely, through these questions, looking to see more of that. All right. So I want to dispel one more myth that I think I've seen here, which is the people that have been doing these sponsorships with Thangs, which is actually myself included, that were technically not allowed to talk freely. Now, I sort of see where this is coming from, and I can personally say that yes, I was not allowed to talk freely, but for a completely different reason that you might be thinking. It was because I thought myself they were using AI and ML to like literally learn from our models, and that's why they said, "Hey, look, just a heads up, we don't do this, so please don't put that up on your sponsorship." So that's why I couldn't. But do you have any other restrictions?
I would have to answer that question. I'd look at the contract. I'm gonna plead ignorance on this one question and say I have honestly never looked at one of the contracts that we do for sponsorships. I do, however, I can think of in the past month seeing many individuals who at some point in time have had a commercial relationship with us, tweeting us constructive feedback and us taking it, listening, and never doing anything to the negative about it. I would say in your case, you let me know about a week and a half ago that there were parts of the terms and conditions that didn't even make sense to you. And so what we did is we completely rewrote them in the past week. We love taking feedback. We love constructive feedback. My DMs are open and people DM me often. I did an AMA on Reddit just last night that was pretty popular in the subreddit. We love it. So no, I personally have no issues with constructive feedback or less constructive feedback, honestly, as long as it's feedback. Feedback's a gift. We try to action it. So I I don't know on the contract side, and I could look into it and get back to you. But I would say at the end of the day, I love it. That's how we get better.
All right. Well, that's what I'm able to say from my side of things. That it is basically free speech. Like there's nothing limiting there. Just I was putting the wrong information out there, and that's what they were stopping. So, okay.
Uh,
So moving forward, there, I have a couple more business ones then, which is
Please, let's do them.
okay. So what exactly? Where do you see things in about like 5 years' time, and what is the plan to get to that success?
Oh, I love that question. I wouldn't pretend to be smart enough to tell you that here's what the 3D world looks like in 5 years' time. I can tell you what we're doing, and I can tell you what success looks like. Success looks like if you're going to be a searcher, if you're going to consume 3D content, whether through discovery means or searching, you think of Thangs first because we've got the largest 3D search index on the planet. That is the case today, and that's where we want to stay. That's the first. If you are a designer and you're thinking about publishing and you're just trying to build that audience, we would love for you to think about Thangs first. But if you're just creating and you're in the creative process and you're collaborating with others and you are working on something with other 3D designers and you need that GitHub-like experience, we would love for you to think of Thangs as your tool of choice. That's that's it. It's actually very simple. We our business model is not exotic. Our technology is pretty interesting, but at the end of the day, the business model is frankly kind of boring.
It's still a pretty tall order to do what a whole platform is built for each one of those, and you're trying to do all three in one. So I can sort of see how you've got your hands full there. Okay, so the thing I would like to ask then is, considering that you've got so much going on, where can we see what is going on? Do you have like some sort of, I don't know, roadmap somewhere or improvement list that you want to put forward? I get it that you obviously have competitors, but still, it would be awesome to see what exactly is coming.
Yeah, there's something I always talk about when it comes to roadmaps, and it's the trade between accuracy and precision. So we have a roadmap, and then what people tend to end up looking at is what's the timing of it. I can give you a ton of precision. This will happen on this day, but the more precision I give you, this is just engineering, the less accurate I'm going to be. And so what I tend to think about instead is sequencing, right? So I go, here's what comes next, and then after that, and then after that. We're doing a lot, and so there's a sequencing. Right now, where we're at is we've released our Mac client for Workspace, which allows you to upload every version as soon as you hit the save button. All right, so that just came out about 3 weeks ago. What you're going to see next are mobile apps. You'll see them for both major mobile platforms. After that, it gets a bit more exotic in terms of what we're building. What we want to do is give you the ability to then collaborate in a team format with group ownership concepts, right? So you have like an administrator of a team space, and you can bring multiple teams together, and you have data lifecycle management, identity lifecycle management, and all that's really interesting. But that's on the commercial side, going back to the boring business model. On the other side, you'll see things like .blend support from us. We announced last night the alpha release for our Blender add-on on Reddit. It was received quite well. We were on the front page for 6-7 hours in that subreddit. It was great. And we're going to continue to invest more into that over time. And then we'll also be updating our viewers to support textures and colors down that path. So there's the content side, and then there's the kind of like commercial side, and we're doing both. And that's the rough sequencing for the next couple of months. After that, we have a year's worth of roadmap, but I'll be honest with you, we restack it every 2 to 3 months.
Okay, but
We listen, right? People like tell me, hey, Dennis, you're getting this wrong. And then we go, okay, what's the best way to get it right? And then we change. You saw it in the past week.
yeah.
Give me good feedback. I do something about it. This is just how we think about it. We listen.
All right. So do you have that roadmap somewhere publicly though?
We tend to not publish it. We could do a better job with that. There's no doubt about it. And so we will publish. I have to think about it. We've never been asked to publish our roadmap, but there is some version of that we absolutely can do.
I just think that if we really get sold on the idea of things, like we could thumbs up ideas that we were like really interested in, and that might help. I'm just saying, I quite like that idea.
Yeah, I love it. And there's tools, by the way, for doing that, right? So the community gets to vote on what they think is going to be the most important. And what we do is we balance different priorities, but at the end of the day, if the top priority isn't what your users want, you're doing the wrong thing. So I love that idea. Yeah, give us a little bit of time. We will figure out a way to do that in a public forum on a regular basis. So we'll commit to a cadence as well.
All right. So, okay, we've really got a hold of what the business is, dispelled a few myths. I want to know a little bit more about the platform. So we've talked about the categories and that you are wanting to do more along those lines, but currently what it sounds like is you're wanting to leverage your hashtag system to sort of build those categories out and go forward from there. So first question, which is,
yes,
why do I have to have an account to download a free file?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. So let me just explain a little bit about our approach to supporting the creator ecosystem, because this is the answer to the question. There are, and I won't be exhaustive here, but there seems to be basically 3 different business models for 3D platforms. There's, I'm a marketplace. There's, this supports my hardware business. And then there's a platform like ours. And our business model is we actually are building tools for designers. But to be the place where designers think to go looking for tools, you have to have some sort of value exchange with designers and creators. And we have thousands of unique uploaders most weeks. So thousands. How do we help them? We help them by building their audience. Now, if you're building an audience, and say you're Jonathan in this case, you want people to be able to like your content. Yes, because it helps get a bit more visibility on the landing page. But you also want people to be able to follow you as a creator. And so the currency to a creator is building an audience, of course. We're on your YouTube channel. So you understand that. To help build your audience on other platforms, and this is going across channels, of course, you want those followers. And so what happens is if you've got a large follower group, let's say you've got a couple thousand followers and you upload a new model, they receive notifications. Someone that you love, a creator that you're passionate about, has uploaded new content, here's a heads up. And so the login requirement is actually helping you build an audience. And the feedback we've been receiving is the monetization of audiences is actually really hard, and it's getting more complicated. I've got this lovely DM from a creator that people know and appreciate quite a bit, very popular. And it just said, thanks. Building the audience has helped us monetize through Patreon. Monetizing through Patreon has allowed us to actually have a career in something that we considered a hobby. So thank you very much for that. So we live to do more along those lines. And to the extent that we can, we would love to find more ways to help creators monetize. We know that the marketplaces, that they're not paying out anywhere near enough to create a profession in most cases for most creators. We know that it's really hard to monetize audiences. And so we're trying to help create a new source for doing that.
Right. So it's very much for the sake of the creator that people have to create an account. Okay, makes sense. All right, well, next up is how does your search engine work? Now, the main reason why I'm asking this one is because way back when I first started using Thangs, well, let's just say your search engine wasn't exactly fantastic. And now it seems to have changed a lot, that it's very much does the actual word searching, less so much the, oh, you typed in, what was it? Like, saw your example was Pikachu and then Pokeballs came up. Now it's very much, we're going to show everything that's Pikachu first. And so how exactly does it work?
It's a good question. It's one that I'll give you a short answer to and then a bit of a longer answer. So the short answer is what we're trying to do is build again, and I'll just use this as an analogy, of course, but like a Google for geometry, right? So for geometric objects, truly if you ask for it, we are very likely to give you what you're looking for. That's how it works. And there's a lot of mechanics, and I'll explain the mechanics behind the scenes. It's evolved a lot. Keep in mind, Things just had its 2-year birthday. So it's a 2-year-old platform. It's still pretty new. What we've done is we've gone from, since the first time you used it, we launched with tens of thousands of models. We are now up to 13.3 million models, and it's doubling every 1 to 2 quarters. So it's this massive index, which means the haystack gets much larger if you're trying to find the needle in the haystack. And our click-through rate in terms of search success has been doubling every 2 to 3 quarters as well. So we're getting better at finding what you're looking for, to your point, with a much larger data corpus. The fun mechanics, if you want to nerd out for just less than a minute, is simply this. We're applying ideas of understanding what people love with a popularity ranking. So if you search for, let's pick Pokemon, and you're probably clicking on one of the most popular Pokemon characters versus some Pokeball where the person used the text frequency of Pokemon many times in the text description, we're going to skip the Pokeball and we're going to go for the thing people actually click on. But then what we do is we associate, and this is anonymous, right? But we associate a concept of gravity with it. And so what that means is people have click gravity. And now we know if you're searching for this, the majority of people look for that in return. And so it boosts it up in the rankings. Now, the first question that you would ask yourself is that creates a recency bias and a selection bias in your data set.
Yeah,
And so you start to feed people into the same place. So what we don't do is use that for all search results. We only use that for the top 3 results, and we call it decay. We decay those clicks. So that click, if somebody said, actually, I didn't want that Pokeball, I wanted this specific character, it has a time weighting on it. And over time, that click becomes worth 0. And so that way we avoid a recency bias and a selection bias that we all see, honestly, far too often on social media networks and probably on other larger search engines. Beyond that, we have what we call the little blue text. And people forget about this because it's very easy to miss. But let's imagine that I'm searching not for Pokemon. I'm searching for Maker Tales. Maker Tales, that's a person. And so what we say is at the very top, hey, listen, you're actually not searching for content. You're searching for a profile. Here's a link to that person's profile instead.
Yeah.
Or you're looking for a dog, but you type in perro instead because you're Spanish speaking. Okay, well, we'll actually give you an English selection and we'll do the translation for you in that little blue text. So there's a lot of, or misspellings are another one. We've added a lot of very basic, and again, this is not trained on user data, machine learning capabilities that say, oh, you're giving us a different language. Okay, we're going to translate that for you. Oh, you're doing a content search, but not really. And then what we did to make it, this is the end of the answer, to make it really friendly to the 3D consumption creator community is we added a lot of filters. That's what they asked for. It was almost a top request on Reddit and every AMA. And so we built it. You can sort by or filter by 3D file type. You can actually filter by, is it 3D printable? We look at, does it have consistent normals? Does it have positive volume? We look at all these characteristics. You can just hit that filter and search and say, these are the search results most likely to be 3D printable. We have actually a bunch of other advanced filters that allow you to basically say, like, I only want to search across these 3 platforms. And Thangs might not be one of them, and that's okay to us. We always put the user's desire first, and so we don't promote our own content in the ranking. And we've just increasingly done exactly what you described. We get feature feedback, and then we go build it and roll it out.
Okay, a whole bunch of new questions came to my mind there, which is
Please bring them
okay.
on. I love
Okay,
this.
so we've got God, it's just it's such a new concept, the idea that a website doesn't put itself first. And I think that's so is that the basically the reason why Thangs doesn't come up first when you're doing search results because you're just trying to give the best result?
Yes.
Okay.
So this was a very principled, unpopular decision in some ways when we made it in the very, very beginning of launching Fangs. And it was this idea of, well, we should, if you're trying to play the traditional game with the platform, then you would put your results first, to your point, Jonathan, because that drives session duration, return users, better engagement across your own content. But what that's doing is putting your own interests in front of your users' interests. And I've been doing this for a while. I've only been at this company for just under 3 years, but I've been building products at scale for a long time in my career. And I've learned that in the long term, if you put the user first, you succeed. And so we do that and we've done that. We give you the best results and we put no rank bias at all on Thangs results, knowing that we will always be lower in the ranking because we're a newer platform, which means we have less content and less in the search index.
Okay.
Now, you don't get me wrong, you can change that scope and select Thangs. We would love for you to do that. Please do that. But if you don't, the default is whatever's best for the user.
All right, that's pretty awesome. And I didn't actually know that you had that whole 3D printable search option. So that 3D printable search option, I guess very quickly, could you tell me what exactly is it looking for? And does it just search Thangs or search all of the websites?
All of them. So, and is it printable is looking at two different heuristics. And out of those two different heuristics, you can toggle them on or off. This is basically we're looking at mathematical signatures that would give us a really good idea of whether it is possible that you can 3D print this object. They're not perfect, especially when you have 13 million models, but it narrows the field fairly quickly. Basically, it is what I mentioned earlier. It's positive volume, and then also looking at consistent perpendiculars or normals coming off of the external surface area. We're going to do some more there. We've got another heuristic that we're working on. But this is another example of it was a top request from our users in our Reddit AMAs and on Twitter. And we don't make a big deal about like blowing the trumpet. We are not big on putting ourselves out and be like, we listen so much. Look at what we did this week. We actually release 3 to 5 times on a weekly basis. So we ship constantly on the product. We just don't make a big deal about it because we're just listening to users and giving them the features that they're requesting. And because of that, we've grown quite a bit. We are going to be the first platform to hit 10 million users in the time that we are currently tracking against. So we have outgrown all the other platforms, and all but one we will probably surpass in the next quarter or two. But that's not how we measure success. We measure success based off of users like it. Are they giving us feedback, and are we building what they request? And
Right.
we track it religiously, and we are pretty fanatical about it. And we're doing Reddit AMAs constantly. Like we listen. You're a great example of this. You beat us up pretty good about a week and a half ago. You told me something I didn't know, and we have, which were mostly boilerplate, not entirely, but mostly boilerplate terms and conditions. And so we removed all the nonsense out that you highlighted. I just want to make it simple and clear for people.
Yeah. All right. All right. So, okay. The next question is basically the idea that there's so many questions that I have next here, and I don't know which one to go with first. But you say about all these the way of searching it. One way of searching, especially for like somewhere like GitHub, because you've mentioned that you're going to be more like GitHub, is the idea of license searching. I don't think you have that currently, but that's because the way that your licensing works. So the question comes here to me, which is sort of a two-part one here, which is what is there a default license? If nobody puts any license on, is there a default license that applies to the model? And then secondly is why not simplify the licensing process instead of it being someone uploading their thing that, hey, I just want this or just that.
I love the question. So the answer is This one is honestly, it's complicated. We tried default licensing at one point, and it's hard to say that there is one license type that everyone in the community agrees on. This is something that we learned. And so then what we learned was we thought about, all right, there's like 3 or 4 that everybody seems to agree on. Not the case. It depends on which community. And we support 28 different 3D file formats, which is, as far as I'm aware, the largest of out of any platform, which means we have many communities. You've got folks that are building models with colors and textures and that have movement. Then you've got folks that are building 3D printing type models. And then you have people that are building and sharing. You can look this up. You can sort and filter within the platform everywhere. You can personalize it and save your settings so that it always knows you. Highly complex mechanical assemblies with hundreds of subparts. And so what we did instead was we said, all right, we won't have a strong opinion that we force on everyone. Instead, what we do is we support any license type. But what's not important is that you support the right one or any. It's that you make sure that consumers see it and get it when they download. And so that's where we spent our time, which is on the kind of like the communication and the presentation of the license. We make sure that it's attached to the content. It seems to be the middle ground that everyone has settled on, but I'm not going to assert that we've got it perfect. What I wanted to share was kind of like the journey to get to where we are, and then the fact that we are constantly learning. The thing about the search index, which is you ask 2 questions in one. There's one about like Thangs and how we support that for our content, which is, we're like in some ways we're just open. We say like whatever you want us to support is what we'll support and respect. Then there's a search index. What you'll find if you go out, and we've had to do this data normalization exercise. If you go out and you look at the other platforms, it's also hard to find perfect consistency across, say, the top 5 or the top 7 3D platforms. There is overlap, but not perfect consistency. It's hard to build the filter types until you have some way to normalize that data. That doesn't mean we can't normalize it, and it doesn't mean we shouldn't normalize it. What I'm just offering is we haven't yet, but we could. And it's a really, really great feature request. I haven't heard it actually from a lot of our search users, which is about 1/3 of our platform. But I'm writing it down right now because I think it's a great idea.
All right. Well, I would say more than anything from a content creator's point of stance, having to write my own license is a real headache. And I really like the idea of sort of hey, look, this is the one that I like. I like the idea that you do custom licenses. That's awesome. It really is. There's not many platforms that are willing to do that. But yeah, that's just something that definitely seems, especially if we're wanting to go more this sort of GitHub direction, I would love to be able to say, hey, look, this is under the open source license. By all means, everybody join in like that.
So I think we're going to do it. I like the idea of just doing both. So here's a standard set of templates. Listen, we've tried all the other versions, right? So that we tried those at default, then we tried templates, and then we just said, you BYOL, right? Like bring your own license. What we can do is a little bit of both. The trickiness of where we were at about 6 months ago is we had so many bells and whistles in the upload flow that we started getting fairly consistent user feedback that there was a lot that we were asking people to do. And so we started to like collapse it down and simplify. What we're going to do next is over the next quarter or 2 max, it's already on the roadmap, a full, like basically like a full page upload experience that makes it easier to like sequentially choose what you want to do. This is going to allow, for example, you to like rotate your 3D model and take a snapshot and then add the color background and then kind of like present the content a little bit differently. So it fits very neatly into the what we call like the full page upload experience that's coming pretty soon versus a modal, which is what we have today that seems to scroll forever. And we don't want you to have to read War and Peace, just upload a piece of content. So we're going to reorganize that user experience. I love the feedback.
Okay, awesome. That's pretty cool. So you've mentioned, I think you mentioned the amount of models that Thangs actually has on it, because yes, you have this gigantic number on your front page, which is what now like 13.2 million files, but that's very much indexed. I would like to know how many do you actually have on the platform itself? And did I hear you say correctly? It was what, about 200,000, or was it a lot more?
No, we're coming up on 200,000, and whether that's this week or next week, it'll be 200,000 independent models. But if you look at the number of 3D objects, because we don't just support simple single part models, we support And so if I
Beautiful.
wanted to be disingenuous, I would actually tell you we have 500,000 3D objects because we do. We have a lot of models that are complex assembly types. If you look at like the discrete number of models, it's about 200,000 within the next week and a half.
And you said that's pretty much the biggest that's out there, or?
It depends on out there, right? So the market has multiple categories. You could make the case that some 3D platforms are very focused on what people call like metaverse, omniverse kind of models, right? You know what those platforms are. And they're in a different category. And then you've got those that are focused entirely on 3D printing. And I would argue the majority of our audience, I mean, I don't have to argue, I have the data. The majority of our audience is still at least 75% on the 3D printing side, and 3D printing and or kind of CAD type 3D design. And for them, I won't talk about individual competitors. I'll just say, looking at numbers that other platforms publish, I think we could make a pretty reasonable case that not only are we the fastest growing, clearly, over the past 2 years, because we're about to pass number 2 or number 3, depending on how you want to look at the category construction. But that's the case today. That's
All
the
right.
data.
That's a
But here's
question.
the thing, again, Jonathan, we're not, you know our team. You work with our folks in like product marketing. It's a humble group. A lot of us are, quiet, put your heads down Midwesterners who are just hammering away and trying to build the features that users want. And so we don't get out there and brag. We don't do the big infographics. We probably should, honestly, with these metrics in them. We're pretty quiet and we try to be humble. We realize we're new and we realize we've got to prove ourselves and earn trust. And so we try to be a little less hyperbolic and chest beating.
Right.
We're more, we just show up and listen and try to do the work.
Right, I get it. I have a feeling that it sort of might have come across that you're holding the cards very close and that you're hiding something, because we're not used to people being quiet about things on the internet. So, all right.
That's great feedback. We're actually trying to just be humble and be respectful of the community is the goal. But I get that, and I've heard this, right? I do a lot of user interviews. I mean, a lot. And I get that there's just an undertone of who are they? Platforms have come and gone over the last decade, and not all of them have had our best intentions at heart. And I think that you'll find, listen, I'm a co-founder, I'm the CTO, I'm out there every day on Twitter and on Reddit responding. I'm very public about that, but you'll find that read my tweets. We are humble. My responses to negative feedback, we say thank you. It's a gift. We'll do better. We do have values and we do have a different approach. It's not look at us, look at us, look at us. It's more let's listen to you, and we're going to do our best to give you what you're asking for.
Okay, makes good sense. I have a feeling it might have come back and bit you in a different way, but I really like it. I like it.
Often it does, right? Being humble doesn't always serve your best interest. In a lot of ways, Jonathan, it's like the search results where we don't put our models in front of others.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so tempting if you want to just make your metrics great, but it's not the right thing to do for users. I feel the same way about like our brand and our tone and our platform. It's very tempting to be like, oh, guess what? We just saw your announcement. We're actually the second biggest platform and we're on our way to take down the first. That's a way to do it. It's just not how we do it. We're quiet, we listen, and we try to not put ourselves before the people that we're trying to help.
Awesome. I like that. Okay, now I have the question that I've been thinking of for a whole bunch. Why on earth would I ever use geometric search? I've tried time and time again. I know you keep telling me, look, I have this mouse wheel right here, and if I do a little bit of that, and then I'll be able to, I'm just like, look, I don't even want to really, if I'm 3D printing, especially, I'm just like, I have to model that to find it or something like that. I get it for your enterprise, but for 3D printing, do you see someone using geometric search?
I mean, I can tell you because I'm fortunate enough to have the data. Thousands and thousands of users every week use it, but they don't know it. And let me explain. I have another, again, this is like just from like a place of humility. I have another like fundamental belief, which is you don't shove technology down people's throats. You solve problems with it. And so if you're on a model page on Thangs and you see geometrically related at the bottom, that's actually using the 3D search technology. We just don't force you to know it. And thousands of users every week click on those, many, many thousands actually go, oh, here's the thing. I was searching for, and this happens, believe it or not, I was searching for a car. I think there's actually a large 3D printing RC car community. And what it shows you is, oh, you found this car that you like. And then we go, did you know all of these other wheels fit on that car? Or you can change the antenna holder on that car. We know this because other people have uploaded versions of that car, but they changed the wheels on it.
Right.
Actually, those users really care about it. Now, the same applies to Pokemon, to go back to your use case. Did you realize that you can 3D print your favorite Pokemon figurine, but that Pokeball, there's actually a bunch of other Pokeballs people have created that you could basically take out of that model and put in and replace it with. The grand vision behind it is not like I want everyone 3D searching, like you're searching by model. I don't think there are people, there's enough of them that have content, but I think it's using that technology to solve a lot of problems. I'll give you one last example. The thing that we're really excited about is that geometric GitHub use case, because it is probably the top request, and just search for it in any large 3D community. Why hasn't anyone built like a real GitHub for 3D models? When you can basically analyze every model down to the triangle level, and then you can create heuristics. I can do visual revision control between any two models, which means if you and I are working on the same thing and you change something on the internal geometry of that model, so non-visible, you've added internal supports for a 3D print, I can show you exactly where those supports were added on the inside of non-visible geometry. We call it the X-ray viewer. But it's the application of the technology to solve problems in a novel way. That's what we're actually doing with it. It's, if people don't 3D search, I'm okay with that, as long as they're happy and they're getting their problems solved.
So ultimately, it's if people aren't 3D searching, you're going to use your own 3D search function to show them things.
Totally.
Okay.
And we can get better at it too, right? Like we've got something in search, again, thousands and thousands of users use this, but they don't know what the 3D searching. When you do search results and you find something, and let's say the search results put you to a Thingiverse model, and you go, oh my gosh, I love, let's switch it from car to, people are really big into like organizers right now. So I love that organizer, but I don't need like a 6-cube like format. You can hit the view related button on that search result, and it does a 3D search off of that model. Again, I could be like, do you want a 3D search, or you should 3D search? Instead, we just say, you want to see, different permutations of this model. Right. So it's baked into the platform everywhere. It's just, push it down our users' throats.
Okay, fantastic. So I've got a couple of questions on sort of the way that things work in Thangs. So the first one is, you are very proud of your 3D viewer. Do you ever find that the feedback's telling you that it's getting in the way? Because I would definitely say that it's getting in the way for me. When I try and load a page and then I say, hey, look, my mouse is over, I scroll down, it zooms out. I know that others have definitely had that problem too. Also, the whole idea of your 3D thing is everywhere. Search results, when I go to my own page, I would love some images every now and then. And we'll get to the search results one last time, which is the whole, why are you doing a list and not a grid? But first, this whole 3D viewer, what's going on there? Are you going to deal with that? Because I know it's not just me.
It isn't just you. So don't feel like, first off, that's good feedback. We're working on 2 things actually. Well, 3. So the first is we're going to stop what we call scroll capture, which is the accidental scroll. So we have to put a scroll block in on that, which is fine. You just have to change how the viewer behaves. That's currently work that we're doing. So that's the first answer. The second answer is there's another group of feedback on the viewer, which is, boy, we love your 3D viewer, but we want to see the images of the prints. And so we're going to be adding a carousel option that allows you to just make the viewer show 2D by default, which is something that we did on the landing page, not, quarter and a half ago at this point, which is just default everything to 2D. We're going to do the same thing. And then you'll have a carousel of 2D images. And if you want to use the 3D viewer, you can, because some users need it. It's really important to look at that assembly and break it out in individual subparts. And so exploding and seeing everything comes back together, that's very useful for them. The third is we are going to be adding a different viewer. And this will be new. We are working on it right now for our mobile apps. And after we use it in mobile, we are going to introduce it on the web. And it will be specifically for colors, textures, and animations. And so that's the rough sequencing of what we're doing for viewers. The feedback is spot on. You're not wrong at all. And we are absolutely changing it because of that.
Awesome.
So I love it. You're very, it's an astute observation.
Okay, so that's pretty awesome to hear. I would ask one thing about the viewer though. Have you ever thought of maybe just having the image and then you turn it on to do 3D like many of the other platforms out there are?
That's what I'm talking about, where it allows you to say, here's the image by default.
Okay.
And then now, because there are images, not all models have associated uploads, because not everybody is uploading a print that they've already done. And so there's going to be the 3D view, but if there's a 2D view, you can just basically toggle it and say, that's what I want. And I'll take it a step further just so you can, it's nice to hear things like this. It's better to believe through proof. If you look at the landing page or search results, you can say, hey, listen, I just want 3D printable models. So I want it to be printable. And I'm only interested in STLs and 3MF. That's it. Another reason why we ask people to log in is because they can then hit save. And we call it composable things. Every time you come to Thangs, it knows to never show you anything that isn't STL and 3MF on the landing page. Or if you're a searcher, never show me a search result that isn't 3D printable. You can hit that filter, hit save, and every time you're there, it will always respect that preference. We're going to add the same thing for a viewer. So you can be like, listen, always default me to 2D. And then you can hit save, and every time you ever get to a model viewer, it will always default you to 2D if we have that available. And we're doing that across the platform because not all users are the same. Again, if you're a CAD assembly designer, that's what you want. You want a certain kind of a viewer to be your default. If you're a 3D printer and you're a consumer versus a creator, you want those images. And so we want things to be whatever you want it to be, ultimately. And those features that I mentioned before on the landing page, in categories, in Explorer, and then on search, they're already there and they're in production. This will just be the third release that supports this idea of composable things.
Right. Okay, so that is pretty awesome. I do like that. Now I want to just say I am lazy. I log out of Thangs very often. And what about adding search categories where we just say, hey, look, just show me the 3D print projects. And that straight up just makes it 3D printable, STLs, ready to go for 3D printing. Because I truly see how awesome your search is, but I just can't be bothered clicking tick boxes.
So A, love it. B, thought about it, and there were only a handful of templates. So for example, I'm to use broad terms, I'm a metaverse omniverse creator. I'm a 3D printer creator. I'm a 3D printer creator for mechanical objects. You can create like these templates that pre-configure all the filters. Here's where, and I'm just going to be very transparent. Here's where it gets tricky if you're in product management, which is you're talking to the product manager as well for things. I really sweat every detail on that product. And the more we add, the more we end up hiding in terms of power tools and search. And I'll give you the example. Up until about a month ago, the #1 feature request we got was a search by creator from creators. And every time I would reply and say it's already there, and you can find this all over my Twitter, and people would go, oh my gosh, I missed it. You have so many bells and whistles in search that you're, I just kind of like, you know how this goes. You kind of just gloss over it and you go right to the results. And I go, it's fair. So I'm always trying to figure out, how do I make it as simple as possible while also being as powerful as possible? And the canned, generic, I think half answer to that question is you don't. You just give the user what they want and it's magic every time. But the truth of it is we're constantly testing. And it's a lot of like A/B testing to go like, okay, if we add this, is it too much? Do people start tuning out? on the power tools. So I would argue we have to get it. We've thought about it, but we are not doing that as well as we could. We're almost biasing towards giving you more features, and people are going, "Oh, those are great. Maybe a few less, and just do it for me." It's
Right.
so I love this idea. What you would probably do is you'd apply to the profile level. So you're Jonathan. Jonathan comes in and says, "Hey, listen, I tend to work in the Blender world a little bit, and I'm big into 3D printing." So you tell us about yourself, and then we go, "Okay, here's all the filters that we're going to hit on the landing page, categories, explore, and then also in search results for you, confirm or deny." Right? Like you can then modify it from there. So that would probably be the approach we take, but we still haven't figured that part out yet. We've just been discussing it internally. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So ultimately, you almost have more tools than you show, and it's actually because you're gonna have to hide it all, and then people aren't actually going into the drop downs and seeing just how they could actually really make the search work for them as good as possible. It's just I'm
This
a
conversation is a great example of it, right? Like you're like, "Hey, I didn't even realize that you had a filter for is it 3D printable in search." And it's like, yeah, we've got a lot in search. It's just there's so much
yeah.
advanced features that which the community's asked for and they are used that, the signal to the noise can sometimes be overwhelming. And so that's why I love your suggestion, which is no, 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 no. Okay, simplify it. I'll tell you who I am. You set the filters for me. That would just be for us the next evolution of composable things, where you set it once and then we just do the whole platform for you.
All right. Okay. So I'm wanting to, I think, probably wrap things up with a little bit more of the interesting questions out there that are really pushing things out there. There is one question that you haven't answered though, which is why you'd list and not grid search.
Oh, sorry about that. Give us about 2 weeks. So that's landing. But I'll tell you why we didn't do it before. So the results, we launched it actually a couple different times as prototypes and gotten user feedback. What users told us was it was jarring to have a grid layout where you had, we called them the 3D proxy, right? So auto-generated 2D images off of a 3D object combined with like great photos of actual prints, right? And so what we do is we kind of like colorize these auto-generated proxies that we create. They have backgrounds, we add lighting, we apply a texture, but they still, you can tell that there's an algorithm being used to create these 2D images. And so the visual experience was like amazing photo, kind of like weird auto-generated proxy, weird proxy, amazing photo. And so what we did instead was we went through and we re-indexed, and it took us 2 months, re-indexed all of the objects in our search index to make sure that we had every 2D image associated with it that was possible, to make sure that we had the fullest possible index. The hack on this would be, of course, to make the Thangs models have their 2D images, but the rest of them not. That's just not how we operate. So I could have had an easy release that would have benefited us, but instead we want to make everyone's content as beautiful as it can be. And so we've been re-indexing. That work completed 2 weeks ago. And completion was defined for us as greater than 75% of the search index has a 2D image associated with it. And now we're just working through the grid layouts and trying to get density right. Some people like basically four kind of come cards, like 4 cards per row, somewhat higher density. And so what we're going to do is basically have a density toggle. You could have 4 or you could have 6 or 8. We're still getting that right, but that'll be coming. We had to improve search performance because nobody wants to wait for loaders, and that's a lot of scrolling. That release, you'll notice search performance is much faster now. We did switch to server-side rendering, and that completed this week. So we're about 2 weeks out, give or take, but we've been working on it actually for a while. There's a cheap way to do it, and then there's the right way to do it, and we're trying to do it the right way.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to hear because it's something that I definitely am looking forward to. Every single time I hit search and I just see this list view, I'm just like, I'm about to scroll a lot to be able to see very little. So, okay, awesome. Now, let's get to the slightly more interesting questions. So, the first one is you're really you're deep into your geometry thing. So,
Yep.
are you thinking maybe like integrating parametric inputs? So somebody could, like, let's say I made some sort of CAD thing and I want it that when I download it, let's say it holds batteries, I want it to hold 10 batteries, not 5 batteries, and then I can put that in within an input in Thangs, and then whatever downloads, it will be edited for me beforehand?
This is an interesting question because there's two sides to it. The first side is, do you want to support, let's just say like Creo-like parametric model types? Those are challenging as a 3D object because they kind of have, in some cases, a near infinite number of permutations. It's factorial. And so you can't just take the parametric object because people want to see what an assembled version of it looks like. We call it like you have to give us the composite and then the parametric. And so there's a more complicated upload flow. On the enterprise product, we do support those models. So I know what you're talking about. But then the other dimension of this is automating the creation process. And that's a different animal. So we would think about that a little bit differently right now. And so one of the other items on our roadmap is what we're calling, well, it's not what we're calling, but it's a concept that's very similar to a remix. But the remix itself is about basically taking a model and then working with others to make it what you want it to be. And that is very similar to like, think about like a public GitHub repository. And it requires a different, like what we call like a user journey, a very different flow for the user. We're in the process of building and designing that. And so there's the kind of like creating permutations of something and then creating many permutations as a group of people, definitely. Parametric file inputs, just like to support them. We have what we call like the ingestion pipeline to support that today. Don't have a ton of users asking for it, honestly, and they're kind of complex because you have to ask them for multiple different ways to give you this content. There's like the composite, and then there's the parametric model itself, and then all the associated objects. But yeah, we're looking at it. If enough users would like that, we know how to build it, but we haven't done it yet. I would argue that like that creation process and creating the permutations, that's a far more interesting problem right now because you don't have to tie yourself to parametric file types to do what you're describing.
Right.
There's other ways to do it, but I also, part of like that, you call it like a remix like concept, although we do think about it a lot different. We think of it more like a repo. But the trick of that is you always have to respect the content creator's licensing when you allow this. And now we're getting into a point where you can't just give someone the license. You have to ensure that they understand what they're doing. And then you also need to track lineage. And so lineage is also a multi-step process because you have remixes of remixes, but you always need to be able to point attribution back to the original creator. And so that's where we're at in the design process right now, to do it the right way while respecting content licenses. We're working through that right now. You can tell I've got a lot of thinking on it. And we're planning to release that feature over the next quarter. And then auto-generating, yeah, it's very interesting. But I also need to respect the creator's content licensing. And again, that's not normalized right now.
All right.
We do take these things really seriously. And also, I'm not unaware of people going, wow, you've got this. I mean, it is the largest 3D search index on the planet now. You've got this massive search index. What are you going to do with it? And I need to be very careful because I never want people to believe that we will do something that would betray their trust. I think of our platform, if we have one feature, it's trust. You tell me there's something in the terms and condition that was boilerplate and doesn't make sense, it's out. There's things that must be in place, and trust is at the very beginning. So yes, there's a lot of like auto-generated 3D design that's possible, especially when you think about the inverse of reverse search, but not in any way to violate content licensing. It's a hard rule. It's kind of like never putting our models in front of competitive platforms.
All right. So
and we never charge competitive platforms. Like we really like live our values, and you can see it. So like these are values, and we must respect them.
Right. So it is there. Just it's complicated. So like your actual enterprise side of things, which is completely like the other side of the world compared to Thangs, does do that, but you don't think it probably right for Thangs due to the licensing and due to from what I'm starting to get, it's very much going like the 3D GitHub-esque feeling. And so what's come to mind then is right this minute, you very much have like model pages. And I don't know if you guys really understand what GitHub is like, but so people can anybody can really play around and do something with it. But what I want to ask then is the way that GitHub works is there's like a page, like a core page that goes with that model, and then you can add like, well, not the model, you can have code, and then you put a whole bunch of other code. Is that something that might come to Thangs, or?
It's already there. Again, we need to do a better job of just explaining our product. It's called the model workspace. And so you've got a model page that's for public consumption. But if you go into My Models, which is in the top right of the product, and you see the list of models that you've uploaded, and you open a model there, you have a different user experience and a different page. There you have files and attachments. You have a verbose version history that can auto update if you use the ThingSync client. You have tasks. You have workflows. So you have, and think about GitHub to use, I think you're using the right analogy there. What do they have? They have tasks, right? That's their issues list. They have workflows. That's just basic Git pulls, merges. We have another version of workflow that's going to release in about a month, give or take. That will be an actual Git workflow system. So it'll allow you to have parallelized branching running in real time. So Jonathan and I are working on the exact same thing. But then Jonathan's also the owner, and there's 3 other people that are working on branches, and you can selectively merge geometry up from the branches into the main. We've already got it working as a prototype. We just have to get the user experience right because we want it to be visual. Git is kind of confusing from, I'd say, almost everybody. And so we're making it a version of Git that's very native to geometry, and you're not using like PRs and merges, but same concept. And that will be there. So the answer is yes. It's called the model workspace, and it's about to get way more powerful. It will be the closest thing to real-time 3D collaboration on denormalized meshes that has ever existed.
Right.
Many companies have tried, and you can find a graveyard of companies that deprecated, large companies, because they couldn't do visual revision control across those versions on both external and internal geometry. It's very tricky, but we're going to do it, and we're going to do it for 28 different file formats.
Wow, that's crazy. And is it cross between those file formats? Because
you have to use an intermediate neutral mesh, and so there's always going to be some loss of fidelity when you do that. But that's only for the visual. You can still work in your native formats, but for the visualization, which think about it, like the beauty of GitHub is, yes, it'll show you exactly what changed on that line of code, right? You got your Python script and it was line 27. Someone updated it and they added this text and it's a different color. To do that visually with geometry, that's the trick. You have to be able to have visual revision control. And it does that today. If you're doing it for yourself or you're inviting somebody else, what we're going to do, it's there. It's in the model workspace. Go for it. Like upload a new version. We've got these examples, but
So what you're about to do is sort of open that up.
Open it up, but also add the Git workflow, because it's one thing to have Git is 2 things. It's branching and merging, right? Combined with revision control, which shows you what's changed. We've got the revision control today in the Thangs workspace version history. You can see it. What we're doing is we're going to add that workflow as well. And then you've got a full 3D GitHub. Like truly, that's it.
And we're going to go back to licensing here for that one, because obviously, what if I don't want someone to do a branch of my model? Is that something that will be limited?
We're going to default off. So we've already made this decision. The concept will be default off, and then creators can choose to enable it, but default off.
Okay.
But here's the thing. You might, as Jonathan, not just be a solo creator. You might want to work with somebody else. And that can all happen privately, which it does today. Again, we've got all of this in the product right now. You can privately invite, Jonathan can invite Dennis. We get together and we version on an object together. It's all private. It's authenticated.
And it's all version controlled already.
It's there. Yeah, we're going to add as the workflow, which is really where it gets fun, because you have 5 people working at once in different branches. And now you have a real version of GitHub for geometry.
All right. So what it sounds like to me is that you've sort of got your 3D thing sorted, like probably more tools than it's needed ever. And that's almost complicating people's lives there. But it's just because we're not used to that, I gather. And then you've got this sort of workspace area that's you've been working on for a long time, it sounds like, and you're now really about to turn up the heat on it in the sense that you're about to add that branching thing that sort of anybody can sort of work together and all of that craziness.
Yep.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Okay, so now that I've got that, the wacky questions is
Let's do
okay, so what's your opinion on the mortality of printing functional weapons and how does Thangs handle that?
So there's two answers to this question. The first answer is what I will always say, which is we respect the laws associated with the content that we support in every country. That's the official answer. We will always support whatever the laws are for the countries in which we operate. You had two meanings in your question though, because it's like, you weren't asking about like, what's the legal position? You asked, what's the Thangs position?
Yeah.
And the Thangs position is we have a default to family friendly, and I'll explain what that means. So we have filters that look at new uploads, and we've been doing this for a year and a half now. Filters that look at new uploads, and if there's pornography, as defined by like this 3-point rubric, which I won't get into, but if it's like, it's pretty clear, it's pornographic. We don't remove it and we don't block it because we don't express our moral framework on our users. However, we do remove it from the landing page because we do have, this is like a shocking number, but we have 10, 12% of users that have some either EDU or EDU adjacent email address. And they do use this. I hear from a lot of them in schools, especially because of the 3D viewer. It's great for teaching like just CAD design, for example, because you can see like things explode. And we have a lot of children that use it with 3D printing. And so that's how we treat pornography. Weapons, we have a very similar approach. So as long as it's legal, we will, weapons fall in like two categories. Is it a prop? Is it part of a print? Meaning like, you know, it's the Halo guy carrying like the Halo weapon, or is it a real weapon? If it's a real weapon or real weapons parts, those don't belong on our landing page. Again, we have this family friendly kind of approach, but as long as it's legal, we do not remove it.
All right.
The user is allowed to have that and keep it, and they can do with it what they will. We don't want people using Thangs to hurt. You know, like there was a trend for a while where people were printing, they weren't collapsible katanas, they were more stabby type knives. And they were hand sized and they were very intentional for like, this is how you sharpen them. And that doesn't belong on our landing page. It doesn't mean that we remove the content. We just don't allow it to be shown.
Okay.
So what our opinion is we don't express our political views or personal views on the platform, but we have a really hard bias towards making the landing page experience kid-friendly because we have a lot of people that use things in school settings, like literally in a classroom.
Okay, so then does the search results themselves then, are those age restricted or not?
They are not age restricted today.
All
we
right.
haven't had the request to make it age restricted. And we will always bias towards openness, and we will always bias towards transparency. And so when we do things like that, we make it known. And I'll give you an example. If someone does upload something pornographic, our filters will catch it, and we'll just send them an email. And we'll just say, hey, listen, it's not on the landing page. It's still there. It's for you. It's your model. But it's not going to be shown, to pick some number, hundreds of thousands of users in a week, right? Like that's not what we want to be known for. But it's also probably not the right thing to do. I don't think anyone's going to make a strong case that children should be seeing pornography without just by default going somewhere. And so we try to follow those rules. We are a bit more aggressive in related categories. And I'm going to get to your next question because I know where this goes next, which is, well, what about like just general IP protection? Like what's your policy there? We're aggressive and we're very fixed. We have a dedicated form and a dedicated process Anyone who's worked with it before knows that we are quick. More often than not, we're known for same day if it's very clearly an issue, right? Like if you can prove ownership, we bias towards taking it down. And we realize that not all platforms do that. We realize most aren't anywhere near as fast, and most don't even have a dedicated form and process. I mentioned this before, we are very, very creator forward, and we always have been. And that's just a decision that we make. So we don't express our personal opinions, political or otherwise, on the platform as a product organization, but we are also very creator friendly at the same time. So it's a weird balance, honestly. And we are revisiting it. I kid you not, every month something comes up where you go, oh, okay, we have to adapt the process for this.
All right.
Right? Like it's hard to do it at scale. And we've got weeks where we've had days, Jonathan, we've had over 20,000 model uploads. So it's, it can move very quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two questions that come to mind then off that. I'm going to go out of the crazy questions for a moment, which is the first one is I'm surprised on the way that you go about with adult content. I'm surprised that you don't hide it until there's that button of proof of age, because that's sort of like I don't know, I would call it the bog standard that's sort of been put out there for most things. Does that not go against anything that's out there in the way that the internet works, or?
Oh no, to be clear, on our platform, and I can't control what happens on other platforms. So like I have to separate these two. On our platform, it's not that it must be reported, and it's not that we manually review it all. We have a machine learning model. This is not trained by us. It's not trained using a large index. It's a standard machine learning model that you can just use and purchase that detects it. If it's detected, it's flagged right out of the gates. So it never makes a landing. It becomes, it's quiet, meaning
it's still on your search results though. And
not if it's our content. This is where like you have to have just like the thing about it's like different categories of content. So if it's ours and we know that it's not good, it's just not going to be shown
anywhere.
Now, if it's a third party's, we don't process all of their content for adult material. It's not that we don't plan to, we just haven't yet. The search index is growing so quickly, but we will. And we will absolutely add a control for search as well. We get back to that point around, has this been an issue? It hasn't been an issue in search that's been reported to us at least, that I'm aware of, a single user. And I look at darn near every input that comes in from users. The landing page it was. And it's just something that we got out in front of early on. We had a report from a teacher actually, and the teacher was like, hey, I've been using this with the viewer because of the assembly support, and like, and there was something on the landing page and they sent me an example and it was like, that's so disappointing, right? Because like that's somebody who was embarrassed and you took a user's day who's actually kind of a promoter in a way and you made it suboptimal. And so it was not 6 months in, but the platform existed that we added the adult content detection. We're pretty serious about it, and we're a little aggressive, but we just bias towards no. It's not like it's blurred if somebody reports it, or it's blurred if we see it. It's just, it never makes it because we catch it before it ever hits landing page. Now, if you try to trick it, I'm sure there's plenty of ways to trick it. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's 80-20, 90-10, right?
All right. The key question I'm asking here is not very much like on the actual landing page, but on the search results. Do you not have to have a proof of ID for those?
So a proof of ID.
Well, the little click. Hey, say that you're over 18. It's
if you know that it's adult content, that's one thing. And so for the content that we have, we know whether it's for not all of it, where we know that it's adult content, it's not going to show up. It's just not. When it blocks off landing, it blocks there too. The way that we do this is actually a pretty sophisticated feature extraction process from the 3D object. So I'll give you an example because you won't think about these things because they're very unintuitive. But let's imagine that the front of my hand is something pornographic. Let's just call this a body and it's very lewd. if I take a photo of that, right, of the bottom, I don't see anything. If I take a photo from the side, I probably won't see anything from the top. You have to know where the identifying features are and do that feature extraction to generate the right 2D content and then run through these filters. And so we don't have that for all third-party platforms, but we do for our platform. And so we make sure our content respects those rules.
Right.
It's not that we won't do it in search for third-party content. We just have to create the heuristics and then also do some more work to add that. But yeah, we're absolutely going to do that. It's like a lot of things. People hold things to this much higher bar than every other 3D platform. So they say, no other platform on the planet does this. Why don't you do it? And we go in a way that this is how we approach almost all product. We go, thank you. Actually, we try to hold ourselves to a much higher bar, and this is a good example. If those platforms don't screen their own content and make that data available in any way, then we'll have to do it for them. And that's asking a lot. It's a lot of engineering work. It's a lot of engineering hours to do that. But we really do try to hold ourselves to the highest standard and hit the highest bar.
All right. So the second question was about the IP. Now, this is sort of a two-part one, which is the whole idea of IP of a different company, let's say Baby Yoda, on Thangs. Like, what exactly do you go about doing that? And just because it was literally said in communities, which is, again, to iterate, are you building such a thing that would be able to sort of take a look at what a model is, and then you'd be able to sell that thing to a 3D printing company that says, hey, look, my 3D printer has IP recognition. I can see that you're trying to print a Baby Yoda. I'm going to stop that from happening. So it's that 3D print aspect, restricting what we're going to be 3D printing, and also the aspect of, do you restrict what we're able to upload?
So good questions. They're both really good questions. The first one, let's break these down. Do we restrict what users upload? We respect DMCA takedown requests like every platform operating in the United States.
Right.
So we will if they are provided. Not all brands approach this differently that are out there. Or not all brands approach it the same. They all kind of seem to approach it differently. I'll give you some examples. There's an automotive manufacturer that loves releasing their files and then letting the community build different 3D printed add-ons for their vehicles.
Right.
Great. There's another, and again, it's a large automotive manufacturer. We all know some of these names. That's very aggressive about submitting DMCA takedowns. We will always follow laws where they apply. That's a different question. That's like every platform in the US is going to operate roughly the same way. The next, so could we create a heuristic that would basically stop people on a printer? First, no. Are we trying to build or sell that to printer operators for their firmware? No. Just blanket no to that entire idea, the monetization path. It would be such a terrible short-term optimization, and it's also really difficult to make it work, and it would be easy to get around it. It's also just not who we are, and it's not what we're building. We're building basic software as a service tools for designers. We are going to release some APIs, but that's the same on every platform, where there's going to be APIs that are for developers that want to basically customize what you do. But it's not for that, and nor could it be used for that. I think there's a derivative of this question that is super interesting that I've been thinking about a lot, and I don't have a great answer for, but I think it'd be fascinating, which is, imagine I'm Jonathan, and I say, I've uploaded this content, this model to my audience. It's mine. I love it. And I don't want anybody else to claim that it's theirs. I don't want to allow remixes, if you want to use that term. It's mine. It's just mine. You could use our 3D search algorithm to block that if you're the content owner. It's harder. It's harder than it appears to implement that, but it's a request from creators that I'm thinking about a lot. I'll give you just a sense for like some of the ways that becomes complicated. But just one quick example. What if I'm not Jonathan, but I find your model somewhere else and I upload it and I say it's mine? Now, Jonathan can't upload Jonathan's own model on Thangs. How do you prove who the owner is on another platform.
Well,
I can tell you because I know the CEOs of these other platforms. I talk to them. We all do kind of like chat, believe it or not, and they're all good people. No one right now is interested in like a consortium of like, this is authoritative ownership of all 3D content. It's mathematically possible using our technology, but everybody would have to do it at the same time for it to work, right? That's just like how it would have to work. It's an interesting concept. I've actually had some of those discussions because I just, again, I'm very, very creator forward, but I don't think it's going to happen in the near term. I really don't.
right.
That's where that would be a cool implementation of exactly what you just discussed, though.
Yeah. Well, so that question that you came up with, like, it really does make sense. I wouldn't. I would say probably the best idea is not really to go ahead and stop it, but just say if you had like how do you know who's the original? Which is sort of
Yes.
saying, hey, this has been uploaded. So okay, it's sort of, I understand the tricky part, and I guess that with for instance YouTube does this like crazy. Like it tells me if somebody's copied my exact video and the percentage of it, but then that's pretty, must be even harder to do with 3D because, well, you don't have the whole literally genetic physical form to go off
Well,
someone.
you're right. Like you're 100% right. But this is where it becomes tricky. So YouTube can do that on YouTube. But if you take it off of YouTube and you put it on Vimeo, it won't work
Yeah.
because YouTube doesn't have access to all Vimeo's content. And that's where I mentioned it's a multi-platform decision. There would have to be a consortium of like the big 5 platforms all coming together. And again, I know they're CEOs, we all talk, but that's, no one's really interested in doing that. It would also be technically difficult because assertions of ownership are still tricky even in that world. You would just have better lineage tracking. It's possible, but it would require everybody getting together and deciding to do it. It's the YouTube Vimeo example. We could do it on just Thangs, but that doesn't solve the underlying problem. It is a constant request. Jonathan, not 2 weeks go by where I haven't had at least 1 or 2 creator interactions where they're like, could you do that? It's like, yes, I could, but have you considered this? And in almost all cases, they go, you're right. That's
Right.
what we're kind of doing.
Okay.
So I think about it constantly. I don't have a great solution. There is one out there. I'm working on it, but nobody wants DRM, right? So like there's this balance between like what we all want. You don't want to try and build DRM in this community that is so open and so sharing forward. People want attribution and they want their licenses respected. That's really it. And so that's why our approach to like what you would call like a remix is going to be very different. We're going to have like this multiple layers, like everything. Like we're really trying to be thoughtful about it. We're not just copying what others do. We're going to have multiple layers of tracking of lineage. And you'll get perfect, you should get very good, not perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but very good attribution as well.
Okay.
And that's how we're going to implement it.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I really look forward to literally seeing a tree view of remixes. That's sort of what I'm looking forward to because you keep saying visual, so that's what that's my thing that I'm looking for.
We have it. The tree view, we can do it off of CLI right now. We just have to productize it, if you will. But it's, you want to take it one step farther, and then we'll. This is my rabbit hole that we're going down now. But I'll just do it for 30 seconds. Imagine a GitHub use case where you could track who wrote the first snippet of code, and then where if you get to that point where you go, all right, so here's how like things evolve over time, like a true DNA that's shared across all these different models. With this, like the 3D search capability that we have, we can do that. And it's deterministic. It's not non-deterministic, which means it's very verifiable and repeatable. It's tricky to build a user experience around that. And that's like, if you think about like the roadmap that I didn't mention, that kind of stuff would be farther out there because it would be so useful. Imagine that you're building a chair. And I go, you know what? I know that chair. I know that chair because the source files that you used, we knew. And the people who use that actually use the source files for some other thing. Did you know, instead of having plastic coasters, you could have plastic coasters that have little bumps on the bottom to stop it from scratching your floor? Giving people the ability to do that, fascinating. The challenge, of course, was back to licensing. And I could do that today with the 3D search that we have. What I can't do is take denormalized licenses yet and then normalize them, but we will get there. It's just longer term.
All right, all right. So going back to the crazy questions then here, which is
Okay.
I've got three more of them, and then that will pretty much be it. So the first one is, how long do you believe it will be until AI makes 3D modeling skills obsolete?
So I think there's I'm going to give you a short answer. And the answer is I don't know. Here's what I can tell you. I've got a little bit of background in building neural nets and neural nets at scale. Let's look at what's happening right now with 2D. So there's a lot of work being done that's combinatorial using like derivative ideas and work, and then natural language combined with like semantic understanding. And that we all know like what it is and what everyone's talking about there. To do that with 3D is a much harder problem. And this is just derivative. This isn't new. So let's like separate these. One requires like truly almost like a generalized AI, and the other one is just derivative work, which is understanding relationships. In the world of 3D, you have denormalized meshing. That is every format, every kernel is slightly different. It's true. And so to make that work and that grafting, I know some researchers that are working on it right now. I get pinged by researchers probably every week or every 2 weeks at the most, saying, I would love to get access to your search index. And I go, no, it's not going to happen, right? Because I have to know that I'm respecting the privacy of all of those results. And I don't generalize that. And I don't assume good actors when it comes to our users' data. But I know that they're working on the derivative. It's actually very hard to solve denormalized meshing. You almost have to remesh in a super normalized way where you pick, if you want to use like a term like resolution, which is inappropriate for this, but if you want to just use one, you have to like upscale everything or upres everything to the same, which is kind of like this backfilling process. So it's going to be a while on that one. People are working on it, but that's just derivative. That's just combining things. I want to put Jonathan's head on Dennis's torso, but on a zebra's body, right? Like, you know, a weird centaur combines you and I and a zebra. All right, so like that stuff, that's just derivative. True replacement of designers. How do you replace creativity? They haven't done this believably with text. They haven't done this credibly with 2D yet. And you can't make the case that DALL-E is like all original works. It's just semantic processing and understanding combined with derivatives. I think true creative work that actually makes sense and that is loved by different communities and groups, I don't know if we'll ever get there. It's going to be a while. And I spent 8 years at a company known for being at the forefront of AI work. And some of those researchers are people that I would consider friends, and they won't tell you that they're getting close there. Again, with text, let alone with 2D, let alone with 3D. Over a sufficiently long time series, probably all things will occur, but I can't tell you when.
All right.
It's fascinating to think about, isn't it?
It is. It's just, I think for me, I find it fascinating the whole how far, well, DALL-E has gone, as well as
Yes.
Mid-Journey and all of that craziness. And then I'm seeing people like Corridor Digital. They're all of a sudden they're saying, hey, let's turn a 2D image into a 3D thing. But from what I'm seeing, it's very much sort of it's a fake depth projection trying to understand the shadows of a shape. And that, again, like you just said, it's sort of just a slight tweak of something. It's not actually generation of the mesh. It's just understanding of an image in a different way. Right?
You're right.
Okay.
You're right. And then there's a next step beyond that. And I download all of the open source libraries, or someone on our teams does. And then we use it to understand it. And if you look at the research that Facebook and NVIDIA did together on this, they took it one step further. They went from 2D to a 3D object. And then they tried to put the appropriate textures on it and colors on it. And their research organizations struggled with things like parakeets, for example. There's a bunch of really good examples. Believe it or not, house furniture is very difficult to do. There's a lot of these. So I'd argue that we've still got a gap. One of the things that we do with FISNA, again, PHYSNA, we do have a 2D to 3D API. And that's very useful, but it's the opposite problem, although it's like two sides of the same coin. So to do a 2D input and find a 3D object correctly, you need to do that feature extraction I was talking about to generate the right training data. And so that that honestly, that's novel. So we couldn't find any precedent for it at all. And so we have an ensemble connected layer neural network that we've designed from scratch with our own research team. And there are companies pay for that, but that's different. That's saying, what is this bottle of water, right? That's not just like, is this a pen? It's saying, what 3D model is this pen representative of? And that's so that you can do replenishment on shelves faster. It's if something's broken and you work on an oil rig or whatever, figuring out exactly what it is that's broken very quickly because it costs a lot of money. It's a different version of this problem. And again, we're doing our own research to build the product because we're not aware of anyone that solved that yet.
Well,
So it's
that sounds pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to the day, hopefully you'll do this, is the idea of, I don't know, I saw something really crazy on TikTok of some articulated dragon, as always. I did a screenshot, I put that image into Thangs, and they show me that model.
it's coming. Give us about a quarter. We're working on it. You have to take a different approach to the mission. So the neural network can't be designed in the same way. So we're optimized right now for a small data set. So class structure that's sub 1 million models or 2 million models. Things is, if you look at the search index, which is your use case, and I love this, it's already 13.3. By the time we get this out the door, we'll be 15, 16. But imagine this, that thing on my lawnmower just broke. You take a photo of it. Does somebody have a 3D printed part that I could just print really fast while I wait for the next one to come in from the manufacturer because supply chains are bad and it'll be 4 weeks and I can print this in 2 hours? That is a killer use case. We're working on it, but you have to have a different, we call it's a confusion matrix, but you have to have a different design of the neural network to support volume like this. I mean, we have a lot of models.
Okay,
so it's a different animal entirely. And it has to be fast. You don't want to wait 5 minutes. You don't want us to call you when it's over, like a bad customer support experience. Like, it's got to be quick with that large of a data set. So we're working on that right now, though. That's a great use case. I love it.
Okay, that to me anyway sounds more useful than your geo search right this minute. I think your geo search is great, but just show me things that are related. Okay, wow, that is quite a little rabbit hole we just went down in there. Okay, so considering that you don't think the whole AI 3D things are coming just over the horizon just yet, what skills would you say will continue to be in demand over the next decade then?
So I think this is a great question. And there's this generic answer that people always give. I've been fortunate enough to serve on the boards of universities, and you hear this question a lot. The answer people always you hear especially in our communities, right? You tend to hear hard sciences, math, physics, engineering, computer engineering, and that's easy and cheap. I think about it a little bit more nuanced. Hard sciences are good. Fast growing markets are important because they give you opportunities to get really deep. You get opportunities to grow and be challenged. I think 3D is a secular growth trend. It's not like I think that. It's hard to find anything that's not pointing up into the right chart in the world of 3D right now. But I think it's hard sciences combined with a fast growing market. So where you choose to apply those hard sciences, that would be my recommendation. I have biases, right? I'm an engineer by background and training. The better answer is do those two things, but make sure you love it. And I don't mean that in the that way that people say it. We're like, if you love your work, you'll never work a day. No, work is work. It will always be hard. It's about not hating it and maybe getting excited about it more often than not. That's like a winning mixture. And then if you want to know my 2 cents on what the pattern is to really accelerate everything, it's just basically these 3 ingredients. So try to learn once you have that combination. So the right technical background, the fast growing market, work that you don't hate, truly, you can find it a domain that you love, it's even better, right? And then try to learn absolutely everything you can about it. Be voracious, don't stop. That's why it's really important to have that second piece of don't hate what domain you're going to go work in, right? Try to find something to do that you are genuinely interested in. And then there's the next piece. And there's only 3 pieces of 3 ingredients in the list. Learn everything you can. Then take roles for which you are terribly, terribly underqualified. Never misrepresent or lie to get those types of jobs. because typically they're betting on, your momentum, who you are as a person. But take roles where you are underqualified, stretch yourself and grow into them, and then never become complacent.
That
Rinse and
was,
repeat.
I would pretty much agree with that. That sounds like some great advice there. All right, and then pretty much that also answers my last question, which is the advice that you would give for the young minds hoping to position themselves in the future. Well, you've basically just said it right there at the same time.
It's something I'm really passionate about. I've started nonprofits in the education space, and I tend to focus on nonprofit activity for children and then protecting children. I work with Interpol to build like a really, really high scale distributed system to protect victim children. And this was just like across the public internet. Children are being victimized, I should say. And I think a lot about people that are coming into this world and trying to find their way and trying to make the world just like a slightly, ever so tiny, a better place for them. And so you can find my background. This is where I spend my time outside of work, is focused on children and children's nonprofits, and specifically the majority of that work is in education. So I do think about it a lot.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think I've grilled you pretty hard. I don't think there's any question that I didn't ask. Um, so Fangs and Fesna, not the same thing. They're just sort of not even a derivative of it. All you're doing is using models that have been developed by Fesna. Now, just in case people out there don't understand the difference between actually training something and the model is what you get out of the training. So you don't actually train anything through your
No,
data.
nope.
Okay.
By the way, it wouldn't even be so let's imagine, like put your Dr. Evil lens on for a second and you go, what if he's lying? It's in our terms and conditions. We also have legal compliance requirements to keep the system separate. Like that's how SOC compliance works. Taking all that aside for a second, it wouldn't even be a good idea. So if you're a company and you've got, let's say, you're a large automotive manufacturer, you've got 1 million models. Do you want 13 million Pikachus in that data set to be potential results that you're searching against? No. There's like literally right now, I can't think of a reason why you would do it technically. Anyway, we don't. And we have, just like with user data, never sold it, never will. We are like very serious about this. And this is my background, right? Like, I've worked at companies that take user privacy incredibly seriously. We're pretty fanatical about it. No, there is a hard wall between the two. They're completely isolated systems. One's single tenant, one's multi-tenant. I mean, like they are different data store. Everything has to be separate. And we have legal compliance requirements on the enterprise product anyway that we don't have on the other side. So we would be violating compliance obligations even if we did. So you've got multiple layers of assurances, and also it just doesn't make sense.
Okay. So okay, that's awesome. Now, so Fangs AI, it doesn't exist. You guys
So,
are planning to make money. It's just you guys have so much funding currently that you're just like, you know what? Let's just build the best thing first, and then let's make this pro thing. Is that pretty much what's going on here?
yeah, we're going to monetize it in probably in the next quarter or two, but we'll do it by adding additional features that like business users traditionally want. I've worked on some billion user products that have done this before, a few. So like this is a standard boring business model.
Right.
It's like people have these exotic ideas of what it could be. It's just not what we're doing.
It's
Like
just
I'm sorry, it's unfortunately very vanilla. But also our investors, they didn't invest for some wild exotic model that's never been proven. They have a person who's built commercial SaaS products before, and they're building a commercial SaaS product. You know,
right.
as is often the case, the simplest answer is the best answer.
Yeah. I think it's just we haven't, like, in the nicest of way, you sounds like Vesna's a very big player. And considering that 3D space well, more than anything, the 3D printing space is not exactly the biggest players out there. Having such a big player come in and create something that doesn't go over the standards that we're used to, we're trying to see what angle it's been coming at. And I have a feeling that it's sort of, we just weren't ready for it, is the simplest thing I could say.
Also, it's natural to ask those questions. And then like you brought up this great point. Like our terms and conditions had all these statements about machine learning, and it's honestly, we're a startup, right? So like some of these things are a little boilerplate in places, and you pointed it out, and I go, wait a second, like this doesn't even make sense. And so we just removed it all. We're like, of course, we're not doing that. But I could see why people came to that conclusion if they were just reading terms and conditions that were frankly like a little boilerplate for a platform, which is, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't write them, and I tend to trust the legal advice that we get, but we went through and we did take care of it. And then there's also, like, there are use cases that years ago we talked about that were, like, imagine like these large OEM parts catalogs wanting to be searchable. You could imagine it's in their best interest to have like this different search engine. And that search engine is people that sell parts, and then a large company wanting to hit that search engine to buy parts.
Right.
Like that's an interesting use case. We don't do it, but that's a different animal entirely. That would also require a connection between the products, which we can't do for compliance reasons. But you could imagine like a private version of that where large parts manufacturers wanted it very badly because it would get them more customers. But that's a different thing. It wouldn't even be connected to things. So like I can imagine all these derivatives that people can come up with, because to your point, they're like, wait a second, this is new. New is mostly scary until it's not, because who knows? And then, they don't realize that, our whole company is based in the US. They're probably, engineers are working on this product with like your neighbors because we're fully distributed. We were born during COVID. Like there's, like when you start to like hear it and you see a human explain it, you go, oh, all right, probably not Dr. Evil Nefarious. It's probably just what it says it is.
Right.
But to your point, there was confusion, and there's always, I thought your feedback was killer. It was so useful when you just said, hey, listen, put your terms and conditions. And I go, oh, that's on us. We were feeding into it. So you were spot on. It was very intuitive, and we changed it in like a week to reflect it. So
all right.
Yeah, you're right. There's nothing nefarious. We're just a little different than everybody else out there.
Yeah. So finishing up this wrap up, Thangs is basically three things that you're sort of planning, which is that search engine, the GitHub, and then sort of the showcase space as well. You've got your search down, you're getting the GitHub side down pretty soon, and then the showcase space of it sounds like it's sort of we're wanting to improve that, and let us know how. Right?
Hit us on all of them, all feedback, even non-constructive. I hate you and I don't like your blue shirt. We take it all, and we consider it all a gift. What I'll say is, yes, you summarized it correctly. The showcase part we're still working on. I would call that like the user-generated content platform. And you'll notice a new release in the next 2 weeks, which would be this really fun new leaderboard concept with weekly contests for the leaders and like big prizes. And not like, I'm not sending you like a Thangs t-shirt. I'm talking about like, we're going to buy you like 30 people a week or 20 people a week, a roll of high-end filament, for example. It'll be a big new reward system that'll help. And then you'll see new landing page cards. And then on the showcase side, you'll see the mobile apps pretty soon. So whole bunch of releases coming. So, give us about a month, and it's going to seem like a dam just broke and a bunch falls out. But again, we need to do a better job of communicating it. You pointed this out earlier. We might have a little too much of like the Midwestern humility in the marketing side of things, and so we can do better there, and we'll do a better job of communicating, whether it's release notes or otherwise, what we're doing, and then on the roadmap, give you a better sense of where we're going. I love this discussion because you've given me a bunch of new ideas, and like I said, feedback's a gift.
All right, awesome. Well, by all means, everyone, if you want to give more feedback and stuff, you can put it down in the comments. I'll also probably have a whole bunch of links that Dennis is going to probably give me of things, then blog posts and all the rest. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, Dennis. Thank you very much. And I want to do this again at some point once my question list has got out of hand again.
I would love to do it again. Thank you for having us. I love your content, and thank you for introducing people into a very complicated domain, which is the world of 3D and 3D design. We need more people like you, and I appreciate the honesty and the transparency that you had. Like, hey, here are my questions. I want answers. I can't welcome that more. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back and give me a chance to show off that GitHub workflow if the opportunity presents itself, because it is wild when you see it on a 3D object. We would love to show it off.
All right, that is something that will definitely come. All right, brilliant. Thanks a lot, Dennis.
Jonathan, thank you very much.
And there you have it. That there is Thangs in a nutshell, if you can call an hour and 48 minutes a nutshell. Now, I personally quite like the idea of Thangs. I think that it's going to be really interesting where it's going from this point forward, and I'm definitely going to be taking a look into Thangs, especially for open source projects, because I can't wait to do, for instance, branching and all things like that. Sort of a very GitHub workflow with 3D models. I would love to hear what you have to say about Thangs, what your thoughts of it, what do you still have problems with it, do you not have problems, are there things that you really like, do you have any other questions that you would like me to ask in future videos, because I do definitely want to do another interview video, so be sure to leave those questions down there, and I'll also be asking for your questions when a video like that comes out later on. Now, big thank you to my patrons. You guys are absolutely awesome, and without you, I truly would not be able to make Maker Tales. It really means the world to me. If you're enjoying what I'm making here and you think I'm worthy of your support, I would love to see you there too. And don't forget that we have a Discord, and that's linked down in the description. Thank you for watching, keep making, and let the quest continue.